Gotta get further in that game. But I also want to ask you guys, those who come in later as well, let me know what you think about this. What your thoughts are. We're talking about 90s games. Iconic 90s games. What I'm saying is, when you think of the 90s, what are some of the games that are like iconic in that? Like that game, that franchise, you can even say it defines the 90s. It is very 90s. Like it was, the franchise started in the 90s, or maybe it was the franchise didn't have to necessarily start in the 90s, but there was a significant release that was in the 90s that really defined it. Like, for example, let's say Mario is something from the 80s, but if you say Mario, Super Mario World, that's in the 90s, and that's a variation of the game that really did define that series. You have Yoshi, you have all the you got all the elements in the game. They carry on to the other ones. So we're gonna get into that. I asked this question on Twitch. Not Twitch. I asked it on Twitter. Asked it on YouTube. Asked it in the Discord. Asked it on in various Discords. I'm gonna go over you guys' responses and just have a chill chat about that. Shane, how's it going? My cock is a fat pussy right now. I'm about it. All right, Shane. Thank you for letting me know that your manhood is a. Well, we know this is an adult stream now. It's gonna be okay. The music might be a little too loud. Let me turn that down a little bit. Okay. All right. Well, let me get the responses. Let me get the ones on the Rent and Chill YouTube page. There's 2 responses I see so far. Let's see, 2 responses. Terrence Jordan Jr. says Killer Instinct. Definitely 90s iconic. We're talking about, we think, dude, when it comes to fighting games, you think 90s fighting games, there's like 3, right? There's the 3 that come to mind. It's Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, and Killer Instinct. Now, there's other fighting games around that time. Like, there's King of Fighters. But, like, I feel like King of Fighters... Now, I'm not a huge fighting game buff. I couldn't tell you... I don't know if this is true or not, but I feel like King of Fighters is often overlooked or is, like, it's in the shadow of Street Fighter, which is weird because I always thought King of Fighters had, like, a better roster of characters. But that's my, like, limited experience with that game. I'm horrible with fighting games. If I were to play it, it'd be like, what are you doing? I don't know. Now I could choose like the best player, but I wouldn't even know what to do with it. But yeah, Killer Instinct, definitely, man. That is a great game. My favorite character in Killer Instinct, well, I went for, because I'm not very good, I went for the person that you could spam the most, which is man, what's his name? Inferno, that guy. Yeah. Spam the fire moves. Probably not recommended. Shane has COVID. You put me on the big TV and lay back. Oh yeah, put me on the big TV and lay back, man. Yeah, let my voice soothe you, I suppose. And that nice tiger painting. Okay. Got some additional decorations, by the way. I don't know where to put them, you know. I got this Corona thing right here. It's kind of nice. We can barely even see it, you know. Got some other stuff, but nowhere to really put it. Got this shirt. I love this jersey. It's great. I can't wear it because I'm too fat. But I ordered extra. I ordered the largest size jersey they have, but it doesn't fit. I'm gonna have to lose weight for that, so maybe that happens. Hey, maybe I can catch COVID. I heard if you catch COVID, you lose a lot of weight. I could use it, man. I could definitely use that. I could use it now because this fasting thing is not really working. I think I still eat too much. Or there's beer on the weekends. Anyway, so additional responses on the Rant and Chill YouTube channel. There's I'm gonna butcher this name. Partogi Ogi? I don't know. Mario Bros. When I say, okay, 90s, I know I would say Mario Brothers is like more 80s, but there's Super Mario World, definitely. It's a 90s game. And that game is very iconic. I mean, that game came with the Super Nintendo. That game, I mean, that's like one of the best games on the Super Nintendo. It's not the best game, but it's an easy game. It's a fun game, but it can be challenging if you want to go to like the super or the super bonus stages, But it's a nice game. It's fun. There's a lot to do, a lot to explore, a lot to collect, lots of things to unlock. And it's a game that still lives on. People still play Super Mario World. They play the crazy hard, difficult ones. I forgot what they call it, like Kazai or something. I don't know. You guys probably know what I'm talking about. The Super Mario World games that are pretty much modded to where they're so hard, so painfully difficult that it'd be like, why are you even playing it? Yeah, those are good choices. Now on, let's check Twitter. On Twitter, same question. I think, what are some of the iconic games of the 90s? I think, what video game comes to mind when you think 90s? One of the responses I got from Bo Chappell. Hard to ignore games like Tony Hawk, he says. Tony Hawk, definitely. Tony Hawk is a series that started in the 90s, right? PlayStation, 90s, yeah. That's a game that started in the 90s and went strong all the way into the 2000s. Yeah, Goldeneye. Man, Goldeneye is very 90s. Man, ever the time spent at a friend's house. Time spent at a friend's house, the 4-player. Someone would be odd job. And fighting over that. He's cheap, too short, You have to like aim lower to hit him. Or like fighting over promising before every match not to screen look. But it's stupid because, first off, the TVs in the 90s were all small. Everyone had that small CRT TV. You knew your screen looking. There's nothing you can do about it. Create like cardboard cutouts or something to where like you only see your part of the screen. Everyone's screen looked. But GoldenEye is definitely 90s. Shane in the chat says Resident Evil. Oh yeah, Resident Evil. Definitely very 90s. That's a franchise that started in the 90s. And that when that game came out, it was revolutionary in a way. I mean, it was so unique and it's such a good offering that even with the tank controls, so the clunky controls, people still played it. People still played it, and it lives on. Same time, you got even with the bad acting, which I think the bad acting, the campy acting, is great. It's what kind of made it Resident Evil. I think some game developers they interpret us gamers mocking the bad acting as this like ridiculing or shaming. If anything, no, it's funny. Like, oh, this is a 90s game. Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Symphony of the Night. Symphony of the Night, not sympathy. Symphony of the Night. That game is great. And that game has that die monster. You don't belong in this world. That thing. Great opening line. Cheesy as hell, but great line, Mentioned Resident Evil, you gotta talk about Silent Hill. Because you got Resident Evil, which is great, delivers that zombie horror. But then you got Silent Hill, which delivers more of a psychological, slow burn, sort of creepy horror. Like, Resident Evil had me afraid of like zombies and stuff. But Silent Hill is a game that stays with you. It lingers. The stuff you see in that game and what you have to do. It forces you to have to... Like, you start off with pretty much nothing in Silent Hill. I mean, Resident Evil, you have the gun and you have the knife. But no one really uses the knife unless it's some sort of challenge. You go to the knife, it's kind of game over, right? That's right. I know Shane loves Silent Hill. Let's see. Other games that Bo Chappelle mentioned. Link to the Past. Yeah, very 90s. Really good game. One of my favorite Zelda games. Sonic 2. Sonic 2 is cool. Now, I wasn't really much of a Sega guy. Okay? I did not play the Sega Genesis much. I kind of played it more afterwards. But yeah, it is a fun game. It's a fun game. I think I had a friend. I'd go over to his house and play it over there. It's good. And he says a really good decade for games. Oh yeah, man, I agree. He says like this is when the 16-bit was moving to the 64. We could talk about that ride real fast. The 90s, I would have to say, and I say this objectively, not subjectively. I think the 90s was the best decade for like the console wars. Like you didn't get that same attitude in the 2000s. There was still a console war going on, but I don't feel that it was as strong. There was still like my team. There was still the PlayStation team versus the Xbox and GameCube. But GameCube was kind of like I thought GameCube was kind of out of the console war, but it was like, but it's good. But it was really PlayStation and Xbox kind of fighting in those camps. But anyway, comes to the 90s. I think that was the best time. Maybe it's just my opinion. Let me know what you think. The reason why I say that is because we're going out of 8-bit. We're now in 16-bit. You have you do have the Sega Genesis Master System. You have that. You also have the Super Nintendo. What else do you have around that time? As far as 16-bit consoles, there's a TurboGrafx 16. I never played that. I never played that at all. Like, I've seen it at one of those retro video game stores. I think I've seen it on the Angry Video Game Nerd Review stuff. That stuff is like a different language to me. Someone mentions that, I'm like, I know what you're talking about. I've seen the ads for that stuff. I remember like curious about it as a kid. Like I'll see it in the gaming mags and weird promos for it. But I never played them. I don't even know what game is on the TurboGrafx. TurboGrafx, right? And then not only did he get going from 8-bit to 16-bit, but then he went from 16-bit to 32-bit. So before going to 16-bit to 16 to 64, they played around with 32-bit consoles for a little bit, which were kind of like a blip. Honestly, the 32-bit consoles were like, well, that happened. When I say that, I'm thinking like the Sega Saturn. But before we even got to the Sega Saturn, we had like these modifications and upgrades to the Sega Genesis to make it like Sega CD or 32-bit, a bunch of stuff, bunch of peripherals. Like I said, I wasn't a Sega kid. I was a Super Nintendo kid. Okay, I chose my team. I chose Team Mario. Okay, I know he's a fat plumber. I'm good with that. I'm okay with that. I don't need to run fast all the time. Okay, I don't need to be running like I'm on coke all the time. I could chill for a little bit. So I never had to deal with all those peripherals. But with the Super Nintendo, I think the Super Nintendo had like some sort of thing on the bottom, but like you could open up, but I don't know what that was for. I don't know if there was ever really additions later. Oh, there was also the Virtual Boy. But all right, we're getting the weeds here. We're getting into the weeds. Let's go back to iconic games of the 90s. But one last thing about the 32-bit things I want to say. Like I said, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, one of my favorite games of all time. Great game. But you know what? I never played the 32-bit version of that game. They ported it for the Sega Saturn. And in that port, there's an additional area of the map that's like new for it, just for it, and I didn't get to play that version. Never, I actually ordered a Sega Saturn. There was a time I was like buying like old consoles and either fixing them up and selling them again or collecting them or whatever. But that Sega Saturn didn't work, and it just didn't happen. It didn't happen, man. Sad. To this day, I don't know. I have not played that version, and it's like I don't think I ever will. So sad. But as far as other iconic games of the 90s, let's go check out the Discord. Let's check out first. Let's check out, I guess, the Rant and Chill Discord. We'll go there. Let's see. Cookie Monster 345 says he always thinks of Final Fantasy games from the 90s. Final Fantasy games in the 90s? Oh yeah, you could say they defined the 90s. I mean, you could say those are games that are very 90s. Final Fantasy VII? Dude, say no more. I mean, Final Fantasy VII, and that was a rough period, right? That was when we were going from like sprite-based 16-bit, 32-bit to like polygons, you know, and the polygons look kind of rough. The game looked rough, but it was cool though, and I could still go back to those rough graphics. It's kind of like what they did with with sprite-based games back in the 8-bit, you know, where it's like kind of blocky and crude, but you could kind of tell what they're trying to make, what they're trying to design, but the effort's nice, you know. Yeah, Final Fantasy VII. And that music, man, that was music I would legit, no joke, I would record that on a cassette tape, because that was a thing I was using. Cassette tape and listen to at school. I'm such a nerd, man. I know another game that comes to mind right now. He didn't say this. Cookie Monster 345 didn't say this, but very 90s very 90s, like iconic 90s games. I'm thinking Tomb Raider. Like the Tomb Raider series started in the 90s. And just about everyone has played Tomb Raider. Come on. Everyone's played Tomb Raider. You know what Tomb Raider is. We think Tomb Raider, that is 90s right there. Lara Croft. Man. I remember going to school and hearing about, Tomb Raider and all this stuff. It's a good game and all that. But quickly it became, is there a cheat for like a nude? Is there a cheat to get her top off? And it was like it was like triangle tits, you know, pyramid tits. You wouldn't motorboat that stuff unless you want to, slice up your face. But, a pervy mind's gonna work, work with what it has. Man, Twisted Metal, like the Twisted Metal series started in the 90s. That's very PlayStation. It's very 90s. I remember spending a lot of time playing that with friends. I remember being in the menu, putting in the cheat codes to play as Minion or what is it, Sweet Tooth. Good stuff, man. There was also another character. Oh man. See, there's so much, and like the nostalgia's kind of coming back, and because some of these games I haven't played in for like in a decade really. So some of the characters, some of the elements are just kind of coming in, and it's kind of like distant memories, like a fog, on the horizon. All right. Now I asked the same question in Shane's Discord, Universe 7. Good Discord. Join the Discord. Okay. Let's see. I asked, what video game comes to mind when you think 90s? Oh, a decade ago was 2012. Oh, then it wasn't even 2 decades ago. It was like 3 decades ago. Holy hell. I'm old, man. I'm going to be 40 soon. And I'm still talking about video games? Yeah. Let's see. MC responded, Doom, Quake, Resident Evil, Silent Hill, Doom, and Quake. Let's talk about that real fast. We talk about Resident Evil, talk about Silent Hill. Let me verify Doom. Doom was 90s, right? Doom. Yeah, 1993. Yeah. Okay. Doom. All right. So I didn't get the Super Nintendo till late. All right. When I got the Super Nintendo, everyone else was moving on to the PlayStation. I had the Muslim yards, raised some money myself. I'll buy Super Nintendo and Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. Okay. What I was playing instead was on the PC. Anything I could get on the PC. And it was my dad's computer. So, and I had no real income. But Doom, the shareware copy, was what I had. And I would play the crap out of that game, man. It was fun. I remember my first time playing that game. My parents were playing it. They were kind of playing it together. And I was like, can I play? And that's it, man. Next thing you know, like, I'm spending night after night going through these, I thought they were like labyrinths, I thought they were like in-depth levels. Looking back at it now, they're very simple level design, especially in the very first Doom. But I was engrossed by it, Doom, and still being a very PC kid, I played a lot of 90s PC games that, like, if I were to mention the names, like, some of you were probably like, what title is that? What are you talking about? How can it be 90s iconic when you don't even know what it is? Like, Commander Keen? Who knows what Commander Keen is? Who knows what that game is? Commander Keen. No one knows what that game is. But Duke 3D. Duke 3D, something else. Oh, I was going to mention Commander Keen and TIE Fighter. Star Wars TIE Fighter is really good. And I think the people who play that game, they know that game. But then there's Duke 3D. Duke 3D is very 90s. Duke 3D is very 90s, but it also has like that 80s action hero kind of crammed into it. It takes the 80s action hero nostalgia, puts it into a 90s game. It has nice attitude. I love that game so much. Shame that it just didn't go through. Ski free. Yeah, ski free. Ski free, man. Out skiing the abominable snowman. Dude, with that, we got to talk about solitaire. I guess PC solitaire, man. Or Minesweeper. Dude, Minesweeper is very 90s. It is iconic 90s. Now, you see Minesweeper like, yeah, that's 90s right there. Quake. Let's just say, I think I agree with you, Shane. Those are some good titles there. Quake is definitely very 90s. On the top of my head, if I were to say what are some of the computer games that are, like, I guess, iconic to the 90s, I would say, yeah, Doom, Quake, Duke 3D, and then Unreal. The Unreal game. There's a lot of other cool, really good PC games that came in around that time, but as far as iconic, I don't know. But then it gets up to, it kind of course, it's gonna be subjective. Like, what you played, what was the game you played? What was it? To really define it. Some might actually say Commander Keen. Some might say, what's the game I played before? Operation Body Count, or Blood. If you know what that game is, I played it a couple times on the stream. I was supposed to play Hexen. Hexen's one of them. But we're talking about this. I want to focus on this because we got some responses here. All right, let's see. Make sure you get it all. Yeah, Dragon Rider pretty much echoed that. Basically this. Let's see. Crazy 8 Chris. Banjo-Kazooie, Mario 64. Oh, yeah, that's right. Mario 64 was 1996. Man, you realize from like the 1990s to like 2000s, a lot happened as far as like advancement, going from like 16-bit pixels to, okay, now we're doing polygons. Now we're doing 3D environments, 3D worlds. Wow, man, a lot has happened. Yeah, Mario 64. That is very 90s. You're right. That's a good game too. Mario 64. Is that Ocarina of Time? Right? Yeah. Metal fucking Gear. Now you could say, but wait a second. Didn't Metal Gear start in the 80s? And he said something about that. Yeah. I mean, Metal Gear started in the 80s. But the Metal Gear franchise that people really know, it started in the 90s. There were games in the 80s. There was, I think, 1 or 2 games for the NES. Correct me if I'm wrong there. Definitely 1. But when you say Metal Gear, most people are thinking of PlayStation. They're thinking of PlayStation. Come on. They're not thinking of NES. Change my mind on that one. Debate me, bro. But good stuff. Someone mentioned Final Fantasy VII. That's right. Sonic 2. That's right. Was a Bears. Damn straight. Oh man, Wiz of Bears mentioned some other titles, other really great titles. Final Fantasy 3 or Final Fantasy 6, Chrono Trigger, and Secret of Mana. Dude, there's so much to this. Because, like, okay. Role-playing games, iconic role-playing games of the 90s. You're going to have Final Fantasy 7. You're going to have Final Fantasy 6. I should have, let's start at the beginning. All right. You're going to have Final Fantasy 6. You're going to have Chrono Trigger. Some may even see Secret of Mana, a really good game. Final Fantasy 7, most definitely. I would hope somebody would mention Wild Arms, but probably not. I don't know how many people know the game Wild Arms. It's really good. Well, definitely the anime intro is top notch. I think most people recognize it for that anime intro, which if you haven't seen, I'll gladly show you that intro. I'll gladly show you. It's really good. And I'll go on that. I'm just going to go ahead and pull that up. I'm just going to go pull that up right now. All right. Let's go and put this on the screen here. This nice Japanese chick on a Harley is a nice thing. Okay. All right. Now, what I'm about to show you, you've probably seen before, but you know what? We're watching it. This intro here, really cool. Really cool. Oh, man, wrong thing on the screen. Really cool intro. Really cool intro. That's Wild Arms for PlayStation. Okay. Um, I would hope people would mention that game as far as being iconic for the '90s, but I don't know how many people played that game. There's also Breath of Fire. That's a role playing game that was in the '90s. Um, Going back to platformers, one that we missed, and it's a franchise that really it started in the '90s, and it lived the '90s, and it did not live past it. It stayed in the '90s. I could say Duke 3D there, right? I mean, the best part about Duke Nukem was Duke 3D, and that was in the '90s. Um, I'm thinking Earthworm Jim. Earthworm Jim. I think there was like an Earthworm Jim for like 3DO or something. We're not talking about that. We don't talk about that one, you know. But Earthworm Jim is a very '90s game, and it started in the '90s and it sort of stayed in the '90s. I think it went the best of it did. Um, it is kind of a unique. I think a unique. Because not there's other platformers that have whips. You know, Super Castlevania 4 was using a whip, and you can you use it to whip across. But it was cool with it. It was fun. And Earthworm Jim was a challenging game. Very weird, very quirky, interesting characters, and weird story. I mean, you're this worm in a suit, okay? Um, and good music too. Weird environments. The first level you're in a garbage dump. Second level you're in hell. Third level, oh yeah, third level you're in a underwater underwater hamster cage, and a level that I despise, where you have to try to like race against time in a little glass bubble. And later on in the game, you end up in an intestine, like in a large intestine. You're going through like a nasty stuff. You know, it's weird, very unique. Probably one of the weirdest games, or absurd games I've played. And I played some weird stuff. I played some Japanese games that are really weird, that really stand out if we were talking about iconic weird games. Well, that's not what we're talking about. Oh, you know what? We didn't mention any shooters. There are some people that love side-scrolling shooters. I like them, but for me, they're not really games I like focus on that much. I play for a little bit. I'm like, okay, but some people are really into it. I apologize if you're one of those and I didn't mention any, but let me know. Let me know if you're one of them. Off the top of my head, I don't even think I could tell you one. Maybe. No. Hmm. Oh, wait. I can tell you one, but it's 3D. And I can't believe this game escaped me to this point. This game is another game that started in the '90s, and I think the best of it stayed in the '90s. I think there's one later on. But we'll see what happens down the road if they ever make additional versions of this. We're talking Star Fox. Star Fox, man. When it first hit the scene, first off, like I said, I come from playing a lot of games on the PC. When I saw it, I was like, well, those polygons are pretty rough, because around the time Star Fox came out, I believe Quake was already a thing. I want to say that. Or there's other, right? Well, I believe that's right. Correct me. No, I could just check here. Check on the release date, I suppose. Let's see. What's the release date for Quake release date? $1996, and Star Fox 1993. Okay, so before Quake. Before Quake. Okay. Okay. All right. I do recall thinking, man, that does look a little rough though. You really had to use your imagination with Star Fox. Be like, yeah, that looks like a spaceship. You know, the triangles together. You ever go back? There's certain games when you try to go back and play, it's like, this is kind of hard. Star Fox is one of them for me. Star Fox is one of them. Let's see. They had a Star Fox 2, but they didn't release it. You could play it. Well, they released it, I think, in Japan, but they didn't really release it, right? Because you could play it at the if you had that. They actually released it, I guess, bundled with a Super Nintendo Classic, but you can just get it from an emulator or whatever, you know. Just get that. They had other Star Fox 64. They had that. I think that's really what people think of when they think of Star Fox. And that was 1997. Man, good time. Dude, we're talking about an era where rumble packs are becoming a thing. Rumble packs. Man, we're talking about a decade where, like, they were really experimenting with things, and these things carried on. A lot of them did. Memory cards died off. You don't need memory cards anymore. You know, going back to fighting games, when did Tekken come out? When did Tekken come out? Hold on. I know I mentioned iconic fighting games. I was thinking Street Fighter. I was thinking, what was it? Killer Instinct. But you have Tekken. And then you have Soul Calibur. Or Soul Blade was what it was called back then. Or Soul Edge. I think, what was the original title of that game? I want to say it was Soul Edge. I think it was Soul Edge. And then it became Soul Blade. And then it became Soul Calibur. I remember playing this game. My friends, they got a PlayStation. One of the games they got was Soul Blade. And we spent hours playing that thing. And they didn't even have a memory card. So we would have to unlock all the characters over again. It was great fun. It was also a game that had boob physics. And I'm just saying, it was good. It was good. I remember discovering that. I woke my friend up. It was like a sleepover thing. I woke my friend. I was like, holy shit, dude, these boobs jiggle. Fucking. I guess I was always a little pervert. Jesus Christ. Let's see. So yeah, Soul Blade. Oh man. There's so many good titles. So many good titles. I think, man, there's so much to go through. That if you really to ask someone, what are some iconic games of the 90s? That list could vary. And you'll be dropping some good names. Because a lot of these names are franchises that either started in the 90s or they got some really good additions or iterations in the 90s. Like Super Mario, that franchise, good stuff. But Super Mario World, 90s. Super Mario 64, 90s. Let's say Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy started in the 80s. But some of its best iterations in the 90s. Same thing with Metal Gear. Same thing with Zelda. I mean, sure, the classic Zelda's fine. But, I mean, when my favorite Zelda to this day is still Link to the Past. I have Breath of the Wild. I haven't really played it that much. I'm too much of a boomer. It's too complicated for me. Jeez. I mean, I could pick up other things and treat it as weapons. I just want a sword or one sword. Maybe two swords. Maybe three swords. I'm just don't worry about that. I'll get over it. So yeah, those are iconic games of the 90s. I didn't even mention Dark Forces. Didn't mention the Star Wars games. A lot of stuff I didn't mention. But, man, I think what I'm going to do now is get one of these bad boys up, Hexen, and we'll work on playing that.